If there's one thing I disliked about the Sony a7S III in the beginning, it is how difficult it can be to color grade the log profiles, especially SLOG3 if you're new to the system. I watched lots of tutorials and most of them gave good information, but not enough so that I was able to give my footage the look I want quickly. Okay, maybe I'm just too stupid. I mean, my IQ didn't get tested for around 22 years, so it could actually be the case. Or I'm just used to Fuji colors, that's also a possibility. But back to topic. One of the best tutorials is definitely the one from Gerald Andan, but even there you have to listen very closely to get it right. I will tell you what I mean in a second. When it comes to exposing SLOG3, you basically have two options. You either want to expose for the highest dynamic range, or you want to expose for good skin tones straight out of camera, but after applying a conversion LUT, of course. So if you want to maximize the dynamic range, it's true what most people say, which is to overexpose by 1.7 to 2 stops until it's not blinking. I would usually not go higher than that, except when I shoot directly into the sun at sunset or so. In that case, I simply look on the screen to see what size I want the sun to be, and I completely ignore the numbers or the histogram. But as mentioned before, overexposing by 1.7 to 2 stops is really only there to maximize the dynamic range, but it doesn't necessarily give you a good looking image straight out of camera after applying a conversion LUT. That's why the way how I usually expose my shots in SLOG3 is that I set the zebras to 50% standard range ±2, and then I simply make sure that the bright parts of my skin shows zebras. That often looks way too dark on the screen, but it gives perfect results after applying a conversion LUT. Now, what I meant at the beginning with the tutorial from Gerald Andan is that he actually mentions that the darker your environment gets, the higher you should expose your shot, which makes total sense, but many people only seem to get the 1.7 stops overexposure, but not that it really depends on how bright or dark your scene is. So especially when you shoot in dark places or in difficult situations that require a lot of dynamic range, overexpose by 1.7 stops. But if not, then simply expose for the skin tones, or just so that it looks good or a bit darker on the screen if there is no person in the shot. Of course, you should use the view assist function in that case to see how it will look after color grading the footage. And that's what Joel Famularo recommends. He's the creator of the Phantom LUTs, that are the LUTs that I use to color grade my SLOG3 footage. And he says that the shadows are clean enough to expose skin at 50% IRE, which means that there's not much noise in the shadows. And I can only agree with that, at least on the Sony a7S III, if you don't go into crazy ISOs. So that's how you expose SLOG3, but depending on how you exposed it, you have to color grade it slightly differently. But no worries, it's nothing complicated really. It's just that when you overexposed SLOG3, you have to darken the image before you apply the conversion LUT. So for example, here you can see that the image doesn't look good at all after I applied the LUT, because this shot was overexposed by 1.7 stops. To get that right, you simply add a 3-way color correction below the LUT and you tweak it there until it looks good. It's important to do that under the LUT, because if you do it after, you already lost information in the highlights during the conversion process. So if I apply the same correction after I apply the LUT, you can see that it doesn't look good again. But let's also look at another shot here where I exposed for my skin tones, and as you can see, after applying the LUT, it directly looks really good, and I just have to make my usual tweaks to get the final look I want. And here I used the Phantom LUTs, by the way, from Joel Famularo, but the same counts for the free LUTs that you can download from Sony, as you can see here. So when shooting SLOG3, you either have to expose directly for the skin tones in camera, or if you decide to overexpose the image, you simply have to adjust the exposure again in your color grade before you apply the conversion LUT to get the results you want. And if you know these things, it's actually very easy to work with SLOG3, and the results, to be honest, are super impressive, especially when working with the Phantom LUTs that I use here. So try it out for yourself and let me know in the comments how you worked with SLOG3 so far and how it worked for you, what LUTs did you use, etc. And if you found this tutorial helpful, then please leave me a thumbs up and also consider subscribing for upcoming tutorials and reviews. I'm out, see you in the next one.